Hi everyone, my name is Richard Santoro and I welcome you to Third and Zen, the YouTube channel where every week I'm sharing spiritual message to nourish ourselves, heart, mind, body, and soul. First, as always, thanks for stopping by the channel. Thanks for being here. Thank you for checking out today's video. I don't know what just happened there. But yeah, again, thanks for checking out today's video. I hope this video finds you doing well. I hope you're enjoying your summer and I hope you're able to find, or make the time to care for yourself, heart, mind, body, and soul. And maybe along the way, we're able to care for one another as best we can. With that stuff being said, I don't mean to dismiss it by saying with that stuff. Anyway, I don't know why I'm second guessing. Let's all take a nice deep breath. Take a moment, maybe readjust your posture, reset yourself, and just settle into this moment. Just soften. Just breathe. Give yourself permission to just be here. Take another deep breath. And let's get started with today's message, shall we? So, I want to talk about Atari, the old video game console Atari. As I've mentioned previously in some videos, I'm a child of the 80s. I was born in the early 70s, so I love the 70s, and I was a kid in the 80s, and I graduated high school the moment that the 80s ended. So the 80s are something that I get nostalgic about, and I want to talk specifically about Atari. If I was home, you would see my Atari console that I have, and maybe I would show you the coffee mug that I got as a gift off Etsy with Atari game cartridges on it, images of cartridges on it. I would have brought it here and I thought about it, but it means so much to me, I didn't want to travel with it. I don't want anything to happen to it, but I was able to bring these old games with me. So when I was a kid, I loved Atari. Played it, it was fantastic, it was it. You know, it was what we had at that time period. It was the peak of technology for a 10-year-old, 11-year-old, 9-year-old kid. It was fantastic. Loved it so much. And this past Christmas for my birthday, this past winter, I got a new Atari console. They make this new one that it's not the old ones, but it's the exact same thing. And they give you a cartridge that has a bunch of games on it, and it can play the old cartridges. And I love it. I remember seeing that it was coming out. It was coming out around my birthday, November. So, when I got some gift cards for birthday and Christmas, purchased it. It was a no-brainer. Loved it. And I set it up, and here's the thing. I loved Atari. I played it. It was awesome. The idea of it makes me so happy. And 80s music and 80s colors and themes and vibe and Atari and all of it, it just makes me feel good. I love it so much. That's why I got the Atari. Now here's the honest truth about Atari, then and now. One of the jokes about Atari, was that how it would work, the cycle would work like this. You'd play the games and then you'd kind of quickly get a little sick of it. And then you'd stop playing because it got a little boring, because even for the time, as awesome as Atari was, it also had limitations where it's like, okay, this is cool, this is fun. Maybe you play a game like Adventure that takes a long time to figure out, and then once you do, you maybe you tire of it and get bored, and then you stop playing. And you might stop playing for like months upon months. And then you realize, I haven't played in a while, and then you play. And when I got Atari this past winter, as I mentioned, the same thing kind of happened. I was so excited. I set it up, hooked it up to the TV. It was much easier to do now than back in the day. Got all set up. I popped in like each cartridge, because I actually had old cartridges, because I had an original Atari that somebody had given me about a decade ago. So I was all set. I was all ready. Popped each game in. I was like, oh, there it is. And I'd check it out and play a little bit and then move on. And I'd pop in another one, check it and play, move on. And again, I repeated the cycle of about a dozen games just to see and to show my godson this is what it was like, and to hear the sounds and pop in Pitfall and Asteroids and just have a blast with it. I haven't touched it since. That was like, around New Year. I haven't touched it. It's still sitting there. I haven't touched it since. So what's the point? The point is this. I want to talk about it through the lens of nostalgia. And not the whimsical type of nostalgia that I just referred to, where when I think about Atari, I just love it so much. That's awesome. That's sacred. That's valuable. I have memories that are within me, and it brings me joy. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's totally great. But there is a psychological phenomenon of nostalgia. An author and video blogger, YouTube essayist, Lindsay Ellis, and I'll post a link to this video, did a great video on this phenomenon of nostalgia from about 6 years ago when Stranger Things was at its peak and the remake of the movie Stephen King's It came out. So there was a lot of nostalgia. And she talks, again, I'll post this link, about the 30-year cycle of nostalgia, how, we always tend to look back 30 years. And she talks about, the pitfalls of nostalgia and the phenomenon. And she says, and I have this quote here, how we use nostalgia to make meaning of the present or to simply escape the horrors of the present. We use nostalgia to make meaning of our present, to escape the horrors of our present. And what happens is we look back on things through such rose-colored glasses. We look back on things and think, oh, it was so much better then. And I remember that. I remember when I was a kid, people looking, the boomer generation, my parents' generation, looking back on the 50s. It was such a pristine time. It was perfect. It was great. Well, yeah, maybe if you were a kid living in the suburbs of Long Island, a white kid living in the suburbs of Long Island in the 1950s when the economy was booming and, you can live on a one-parent income, it was great. But it was not great overall for women, for people of different races, for tensions in the world, the Cold War, so many things. It wasn't perfect. So we tend to look back on things and say, oh, it was so much better. We have to remember that our memory works in a unique way. When our brain is remembering something, we are not literally remembering it. Our brain works sort of like a photo album. Our brain is remembering images of our memory. So it's almost like not the original, it's a photocopy of a photocopy. And that can be really, really flawed. That can be really, really inaccurate. Why am I talking about this? Well, because 2 reasons. Number one, in our society for the last decade or so, people have tended to look back on a time where they wanted to make this country great again. They look back on a time when things were supposedly great. And now, I respect wanting things to be better. I respect looking around at the world around us and being troubled by it. I do that. Many or most of us do that. Lawnmower. We look back on a time and think, oh, it must have been better. We want that again. But it's a dishonest view of history. And that right there, number one, is a flaw. To not be honest about history. To not be honest about the way things were. And we want to look at history and be honest about things. And what we want to do is we want to look at our present and say, okay, these are the actual problems. Let's handle it. Let's deal with it. Let's be sincere. Let's stop looking back at the past in such a rose-colored lens, in this idyllic way, and let's be honest about what things were like. And then let's be honest about the way things are today, and let's handle things. Jesus in his time dealt with this as well. The Pharisees, the Sadducees, much of the Jewish nation, culture, religion, society would look back on the prophets, would look back on Israel, and they would raise these prophets up, Ezekiel and Jeremiah and Isaiah, and revere them. And that's okay. But what they forget when they would look back is that those prophets in those times were not welcomed by their people at all. They did not like what the prophets had to say in terms of criticism. They were criticizing leaders, society, religion, all of it. So when the people of Jesus' time would look back at these pillars and think, oh, they were so awesome, they were superheroes. Yeah, the people didn't see it that way at the time. And coincidentally, they treated Jesus that way. They didn't lift him up as a pillar the way we do today. And I don't mean to be dismissive of Jesus that way. I feel like I'm rambling a little bit about nostalgia, about Jesus, and I want to bring this in for a landing. Atari was great when I was a kid, and it's great now. But it doesn't rise to this level of amazingness that sometimes I feel it did in my mind. I can love it. I can find it to be a source of joy in my memory and a source of joy in my present day nostalgia. But I am honest that the game had limitations, and I didn't spend all my time living in it because sometimes you get bored. That's the honest truth about it now and then. And I think we would be really well served to treat our view of all things past and present that way. Not through this lens of nostalgia where we're trying to escape the present and look at a time period and think of the past and think it was so awesome and we have to go back to that time period, because I have news for you, that time period also had its limitations and horrors and terrible things about it. So rather than trying to make something great again, perhaps we just try to make this time period a time of love, of healing, of change, of progress, of doing better, of being the best versions of ourselves as individuals and as a society, sincerely, honestly, objectively. And with the lawnmower getting closer, I'm going to say thanks be to God. All right, my friends, I want to thank you for stopping by the channel. I want to thank you for checking out today's video. I do hope that this video found you doing well, and I hope you have a great day, a great rest of your week, and I wish you nothing but peace, love, and fellowship with God on your journey as you go forward. I love you all. Have a good one. Ciao, ciao.